we talk about today's stated meeting, and we have a very big agenda for this stated meeting, I want to just start with a few brief acknowledgments. Over the last several days, we obviously all witnessed and experienced a truly historic snowstorm, the worst, quite frankly, that we have seen in over 5 years in our city, with dangerously cold temperatures that tragically claimed the lives of 10 New Yorkers. A storm of this magnitude required a comprehensive, all-hands-on-deck, all-of-government response, and I first want to thank the sanitation workers who worked around the clock, often in very dangerous conditions, to keep our streets clear and clean. I want to thank City Hall. I want to thank the first responders. I want to thank the city agencies for their hard work in keeping New Yorkers safe. I also want to acknowledge events that are happening beyond New York City, but that understandably have caused concern here at home. What is unfolding in Minnesota is more than just disturbing. It flies in the face of what government and law enforcement are entrusted to do, which is to protect the public. In the past several weeks, 2 people have been fatally shot, and there have been multiple reports of children being taken into custody. ICE is quite literally harassing, jailing, and murdering innocent people across the country, and it has become a threat to both our safety and to our democracy. I spoke with Leader Schumer's office yesterday, and I've said that there's no reason our tax dollars should continue to support ICE's operations unless the agency is completely structurally reformed. And I want to thank the colleagues who signed on to a letter and sent that letter to Leader Schumer's office. And while I'm not able to publicly discuss the details to protect privacy and integrity of the ongoing process of our council employee, Raphael, who I do want to reiterate remains in New York, which is a key important fact. He was wrongfully taken into custody by ICE. We are literally working around the clock to secure his removal. We are doing everything possible to secure his removal and release. With that, turning to this afternoon's stated meeting. So today, the New York City Council will be taking action that is both rare and consequential. We are actually overriding more mayoral vetoes in one day than the council has in the last decade combined. That fact alone should underscore how seriously we are approaching this moment. These overrides reflect legislation that has been debated thoroughly, refined carefully, and supported by a clear supermajority of elected representatives from across the city. When the council acts with that level of consensus, we have an obligation to follow through. Today, the council will vote to advance bills that promote good governance and transparency, because that is what New Yorkers expect, and that's certainly what they deserve. We will vote to reform street vending in a way that brings fairness and clarity and dignity to an essential part of our city's economy. We will vote to create a legal framework that gives survivors of assault their best chance at seeking accountability. And we will vote to enhance protections for drivers and for delivery workers. And we will vote on the Alain Etienne Safety and Security Act to improve working conditions for security guards. I was at 32BJ this morning with Alain's family. I want to reiterate that this is the best testament that we can do to honor the sacrifice that he made. Alain literally saved lives at that fatal shooting by turning off the elevator bank so that more people were not killed. And he was a hero. And this bill honors that fact, and it honors the fact that our security guards are on the front lines doing such important work, and it addresses the issue of fair pay, of security workers receiving benefits, and it addresses the real issue we have about turnover in that industry. So I also want to be clear that not every bill that was vetoed will be overridden. Overrides require a supermajority, and when that threshold was not met, the council is respecting the process, because that is how responsible governance works. It's also important that I want to speak about another urgent issue before the council today, anti-Semitism. So last week, there were 73 swastikas graffitied onto a playground in Borough Park. I went out to see the playground, 73 swastikas in 2 days. displays, on the slides, on the play equipment. It is totally reprehensible. And on Tuesday, on International Holocaust Remembrance Day of all days, a rabbi was verbally and physically assaulted in a horrific anti-Semitic attack in Forest Hills. And just last night, a vehicle struck the entrance at 770 at the Chabad World Headquarters in Crown Heights in a deeply concerning incident. The NYPD, who I spoke to last night, is investigating the circumstances around that incident. These incidents are disgusting, they're deplorable, but unfortunately they're not new. Jewish New Yorkers make up roughly 10% of the city's population, yet last year they were victims of 57% of all reported hate crimes. 57%. That is a reality that we cannot normalize and we cannot ignore. Today we are taking action. As part of the Council's 5-point action plan to combat anti-Semitism, we are introducing legislation to address this crisis head-on. Our safe access bills are designed to ensure that when protests are planned near sensitive locations such as synagogues, you okay? You want some water? No, sorry. No, oh, sorry. Synagogues, churches, mosques, and schools, the NYPD conducts a safety plan and a safety risk assessment. These bills provide law enforcement as well as the general public with a clear framework to maintain safe entry, so ingress and egress, while allowing lawful protests to continue. So I want to be very clear about that. The First Amendment right to peacefully protest is sacrosanct. It's what our country was built on. None of these bills penalize protests. That is not what we're doing. What we are doing is really creating these safe perimeters that allow people to freely move into their respective house of worship and schools. And so what the bills also do is they make sure that we're not denying New Yorkers their respective freedom of religion or their basic sense of security. Under these bills, enforcement is not based on speech or viewpoint. It's based on conduct that endangers others. So the safety perimeters have nothing to do with the message that is conveyed. We've struck this balance before. In 2008, after escalating harassment outside reproductive health clinics, the City Council, I'm sure Councilmember Brewer, you were there with that, so thank you for that. The City Council passed laws to ensure safe access while preserving the right to peacefully protests. Those laws survived legal challenges because they were carefully crafted and precisely crafted to be constitutional. We are following that same lawful blueprint right now with these laws, and these protections will apply to every New Yorker, regardless of the house of worship they attend or the school their children go to. And so thank you. With that, I'm going to call up a number of our colleagues to speak today. So first, if you're able to, I want to call up Councilmember Wan. Yeah? Okay. No problem.
Thank you so much, Speaker Menin. Today we're voting to override the veto for my bill, Intro 479A, which will require the Chief Procurement Officer, in consultation with the Conflicts of Interest Board and the Department of Investigation, to establish standards and procedures that contractors must use to identify conflicts of interest and misconduct among their officers, employees, and subcontractors. Contractors will be required to certify compliance upon contract execution and notify the city within 10 business days if they become aware of such conflict of interest or misconduct during the term. This is especially important because of repeated corruption and procurement scandals that New Yorkers have witnessed in the last 4 years, especially, including high-profile cases of fraud and abuse within our contracting management system. It's not surprising that our previous mayor, Eric Adams, vetoed Intro 479A because this was seen again and again and again under his leadership, and it is what inspired this bill from being written and drafted in the first place, of how weak current oversight leads and repeated corruption procurement scandals have been. And under the previous mayoral administration, we have witnessed high-profile cases such as 70 NYCHA employees who were charged with soliciting over $2.1 million in bribes from contractors in exchange of no-bid contracts. We've also had a joint hearing with the former Parks Department chair and now the Oversight Committee chair, Shekhar Krishnan. We saw that the Parks Department awarded $40 million in street tree planting contracts with Griffin Landscaping, whose owner was indicted for a $2.4 million environmental bribery scheme. A $432 million no-bid contract was given to DocGo, a company found overpaying security subcontractors by $2 million, skimming off over $400,000 in overhead for almost 10,000 unused hotels, and failing to ensure promised social casework services, and so forth. So when this bill is enacted, with the override of this veto, it applies contracts. This applies to contracts that are valued at $100,000 or more. And this requires that chief procurement officers to establish standards and procedures for contractors to determine existence of conflicts of interest and misconduct concerning city contracts, and they must do this in consultation with the Conflict of Interest Board and the Department of Investigation. And there will be self-certification and compliance of these standards, and the contractors, if the contractors become aware of such conflicts of interest and misconduct during the contract term, they would have to report this to the Mayor's Office of Contract Services within 10 business days. Once the standards and procedures are established, the CPO must send a copy to the Speaker and the Mayor within 7 days. So by July 1st, the Chief Procurement Officer must annually post on the city's website and submit a report to the Speaker and Mayor that summarizes these conflict of interest. And this law will take effect in 120 days after it becomes law. So thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to Speaker Menin, who has been a great advocate for procurement reform to make sure that we don't have corruption any longer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Wan. This is such an important issue, and I really want to thank you for your leadership on that. And I want to assure people we're going to be doing a lot more on that. Just this week, we had a contracts hearing where we're going to be putting forward bills to eradicate long-term no-bid contracts, which could save the city billions of dollars. I see we've been joined by our public advocate, so I'm going to ask him to come up, and our public advocate, Jamani Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and congratulations. I think this is my first press conference with you as Speaker, so that's awesome. Looking forward to many more. I'm proud to be here because, as mentioned, I think the prior administration did a lot of things that could harm the city, and I'm proud to stand with Speaker Menin and the Council as they continue a legacy of pushing back on that harm and being a co-equal branch of government, and hopefully we can begin to move forward. The bill I have is Intro 408. It was vetoed without any real justification. It was simply to create a division of street vendor assistance. The new unit housed within the Department of Small Business Services will be charged with providing training, outreach, and education to all food vendors and general vendors regarding entrepreneurship and compliance with all applicable local laws, rules, and regulations. Street vendors are New York City's smallest businesses and provide some of the most affordable options for New Yorkers facing an increasingly unaffordable city, yet they don't have the support from the city they need to survive, and they're also among some of the most vulnerable in our population. This would give street vendors access to many of the same tools afforded to other small businesses. And speaking with vendors about the barriers they face, it's clear we can do more, and an office dedicated to street vendor assistance will help these entrepreneurs navigate obstacles to licensing, inconsistency enforcement, and regulations that make it near impossible to operate in a successful and sustained way. We just spoke to some of the vendors we spoke to before on video, and a few days ago, some people came over and just took all of their goods. This is not the way that our small businesses should be treated in this city, particularly a city that uses them every single day with inconsistent laws, inconsistent enforcement. So I'm proud that I'm part of, I think, some of the largest overrides that we have ever seen. Very proud of that. And I'm hoping with this, we can finally move forward. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Public Advocate, and thank you for that important legislation to protect street vendors. We really appreciate it. I'm now going to call up Councilmember Brooks Powers.
Thank you. Today's veto override vote is about restoring the promise this council made unanimously when we passed Intro 1297 to amend the Gender Motivated Violence Act. That promise was simple and powerful, that survivors would have a meaningful, enforceable path to justice. That accountability would not stop with individual perpetrators, but would extend to the institutions that enabled abuse or failed in their duty to protect. Intro 1297 responds directly to legal uncertainty that put hundreds of survivor cases at risk. It restores the look-back window and makes clear, unmistakably, that the GMVA applies to institutions as well as the individuals. Survivors cannot afford ambiguity in the law, and they certainly cannot afford silence when their rights are threatened. I want to thank Speaker Menin and my colleagues for their leadership and unity. Today's override reaffirms that when survivors' access to justice is on the line, this council acts decisively and together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we are going to hear from Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. I want you to know about vendors. They have the best coffee. I have it every morning. Just want to let you know. So I am interested in your support, which I think we will get, for overriding 570B, known as the Land Bank Bill. And this will provide a board comprised of the mayor or their designee, the commissioner of finance or their designee, the speaker of the council. Will appoint 3 people, and then there'll be 1 person appointed by both with an advice and consent. And this land bank will be empowered under state and local law to purchase tax liens from the city and to enforce those liens in accordance with policies and procedures intended to promote the goals of collecting outstanding revenue. The past administration thought that we were not interested in collecting revenue. We are, but we also want to preserve ownership and equity, interest in homes. We want to prevent the displacement of residents from their dwellings, if appropriate. We want to promote proper and effective management of dwelling residences, and we want to prevent recidivism among properties with tax liens. This land bank bill replaces New York's private sector-driven high bidder tax lien sales with a public-focused nonprofit approach. And what it is, it really does, I hope, have more tools in the toolbox for affordable housing, preventing displacement, community-oriented housing as a result, a charitable nonprofit involved, and making sure that there's rehab and affordable housing at the end. This is a very long discussion, and I want to thank Emery Ida from the Finance Division. It's his baby. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Brewer. And okay. And our next speaker is Councilmember Pirina Sanchez.
Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to start with thanking you, Speaker, for your support on the vending bill, not just in this override, but from your time as chair of the Committee on Consumer and Worker Protection, sitting through those many hours-long hearings. Today, New York City is finally reforming its street vending system in a way that will work for everyone. By overriding 431B, we are replacing decades of dysfunction with a system that is more just for vendors, more predictable and fair for brick-and-mortar businesses, and that delivers more orderly, shared spaces for all New Yorkers. This reform breaks through arbitrary license caps frozen in place since the 1970s and delivers deep change that many long believed was impossible. Access to licenses is paired with meaningful consequences for bad actors and monitoring by a more diverse set of stakeholders. I want to be clear about this because it's a common misconception about what the bill will do. Today, 70% of street vendors who are vending food are unlicensed. If you live in my corner of the city, it's closer to 90%, especially on a nice summer day. 40% of general vendors are unlicensed. We are talking about bringing those vendors, existing vendors, into compliance. We're not talking about more vending. We're talking about providing priority to vendors who've been waiting on a wait list for over 10 years. More enforcement will come with the bill, including more DSNY personnel, and also with the implementation of the Public Advocates Bill 408, more education and resources for street vendors. And there are new, stronger rules around suspension and revocation, which will, in a world where people have access to licenses, finally mean something. And new rules around litter, obstruction, and illegal dumping for vendors. Finally, we're adding additional monitoring by an expanded street vending advisory board that includes more of the voices of New Yorkers who are affected by our street vending system, including more diverse businesses like supermarkets. Thank you, Speaker. Again, thank you to the indefatigable staff and members of the Street Vendor Project, the brick and mortar business owners, bids, supermarkets, bodegas, and restaurants who kept showing up to hard meetings and didn't stop answering my calls. The agency staff and the new mayor and administration's leadership who understand that dignity and organization on our streets must go hand in hand. And again, to our Speaker. As the daughter and granddaughter of street vendors, this historic moment is also deeply personal. Past mayor notwithstanding, we are ushering in a new era for how this city treats its smallest businesses and manages shared public space. I know we as a council will fight tooth and nail to ensure that every part of this law is fully and fairly implemented so that these reforms deliver on their promise for vendors, for brick and mortar businesses, for consumers, and for all New Yorkers.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Sanchez, and congratulations. I know how hard and long you worked on these bills, so thank you. We are next going to hear from Councilmember Amanda Farias.
Thank you, Speaker Menin. I want to begin with Introduction 1120A, legislation that ensures the strengthening of good management, ensuring fairness and clarity, and combating illegal discrimination within New York City's cooperative housing system by bringing long overdue transparency to the cooperative sale and purchase process. For many New Yorkers, cooperative apartments are the gateway to middle-class homeownership. Yet, under the status quo preserved by the mayor's veto, the absence of enforceable timelines creates a legal vacuum, one that allows bad actors to operate without accountability and creates conditions where discrimination can go unchecked. Buyers can meet every requirement and still be left waiting indefinitely, without communication or resolution. This veto was counterproductive to addressing the real housing crisis in front of us. Despite broad coalition support and council support and extensive stakeholder engagement, the mayor chose to veto a bill that simply requires transparency and a response. On his final day in office, former Mayor Adams chose to protect the opaque status quo rather than provide clarity and predictability in a cooperative housing process. As a result, buyers remain vulnerable, and cooperative boards themselves are left without clear standards that would protect them from inconsistency, liability, and claims of unfair treatment. Turning now to Resolution 1251. Introduction 1251, apologies. This legislation reflects the same core values: fairness, accountability, and clear rules of the road, but in the context of economic opportunity and lawful work. Introduction 1251 is a key component of the Council's street vendor reform package. Under existing law, supervisory and general vending license applications do not always result in licenses being issued, creating unnecessary delays and growing waiting lists for working New Yorkers who are trying to earn a living within the legal framework this Council has already established. This bill authorizes the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection to issue additional applications when fewer licenses than authorized are issued, ensuring that the mandated quantity of licenses permitted by law actually get issued that year. Yet, Introduction 1251 was also vetoed, reinforcing a troubling pattern of rejecting reasonable, consensus-driven reforms that fix administrative failures and make city systems work as intended. That veto preserved inefficiency and uncertainty, delaying access to lawful work for vendors who are ready, eligible, and simply waiting for the system to function. Former Mayor Eric Adams' 11th hour vetoes were politically motivated attempts to shield corporate interest at the expense of vulnerable working-class New Yorkers, and I will proudly be voting to override both of them today. Thank you, Speaker Menin, for bringing both to the override.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Farias. And our last speaker, last but certainly not least, is Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to take a step back and recognize the historic nature of today. We are overriding, under Speaker Menin's leadership, a number of vetoes from the prior mayor. A mayor who, on his way out the door, took stances that were anti-worker, anti-immigrant, the capstone of his time in power. But under this council and under the leadership of Speaker Menin, we are sending the message loud and clear that we will stand with everyday New Yorkers in this city, and we will do so even when the prior mayor hadn't, marking a sharp departure from the politics of yesterday and the new politics of this new council. So thank you very much, Speaker. I'm here today to talk in particular about one of the overrides that we are doing, which is taking on Uber, Lyft, and corporate corruption. In the last hours of Eric Adams' term, a term that I might add was rife with corruption and selling out our city in many different ways, turning his back on immigrants. His legacy was further tarnished by his last-minute attempt to betray 100,000 workers, or the drivers of this city, many of whom are immigrants. Today, we are righting that wrong and overturning his anti-immigrant, anti-worker veto. My legislation to end the unfair firings of Uber and Lyft drivers is the largest due process protection for these workers in the nation. And as we stand here today, I know the nation is watching New York City, as for the first time in history, Uber and Lyft will be held accountable in this way, sending a message clearly from here in New York City across the country that the time of unchecked control by these billion-dollar corporations is coming to an end. When drivers see the New York City Council override this veto, they will look to their state legislatures and city councils across the country to pass the same protections for them, as is already happening. These past 2 years, Uber and Lyft have been running scared, knowing that this bill has the ingredients to start a drivers' rights movement, the next phase of this movement following the medallion crisis. These two companies have used their billion-dollar war chests to spread fear and outright lies to New Yorkers, because that is the only thing they know how to do: waste money and spread fear. The stance we are taking today will make our nation better and bring more rights to the workers who make our city run. Our drivers are often the first people we meet in the city, taking us to and from the airport, to our homes, bringing us to a new Broadway show, or simply helping us get from one part of the city to the next safely. But they are workers with families who are struggling to pay their rent or their mortgage, childcare, or to put food on the table. And they are workers who, because of our winter storm this weekend, lost critical hours to earn money to pay their rent next month. We all know how essential and under-recognized drivers are. They do all of this work, but as they get their children ready for school in the morning, they can look down at their phone and see they've been deactivated or fired from the app with no notice or no process whatsoever, no ability to even reach out to Uber and Lyft to contest their wrongful firing. But that changed with this bill when we passed it. But now, as we override the veto, it will change for good. Drivers deserve dignity and fundamental rights, notice, due process, and a chance to appeal when they've been fired. And today, we will finally deliver those rights. Thank you so much, Speaker, and to all my colleagues.
The Speaker will now take on-topic questions on the 17 bills being overridden today and those being introduced today. And off-topic questions later.
Speaker, I wonder, at the same time you're taking all this action, which involves worker protection and affordability for New Yorkers, your reaction to the mayor now ordering all these efficiencies in every agency, which do you think it'll undermine what you're doing today?
That sounds like an off-topic.
No, I got it. I got it. No, not at all. We do need to find savings in city agencies. I'm a huge proponent of that. We have to identify savings immediately, across the city budget, and there are a number of ways that this council intends to do so. Just this week, we had a hearing, as I mentioned, in the Contracts Committee on two bills that I have to, first of all, eradicate the long-term use of no-bid contracts in emergencies. During COVID, no-bid contracting was suspended over 100 times to the tune of $7 billion. So the city severely overpaid for PPE again and again and again. In the last administration, no-bid contracting was used for years on end during the asylum seeker crisis, including the $430 million DACO contract that Councilmember Wan referred to, or the nearly $1 billion no-bid contract to the Hotel Association. There's no small business, and I'm a former small business owner in New York City, who would tell you that they would, if they had to do bidding, would take the first bid and not competitively bid. When you serve as commissioner, as I did, you are required to competitively bid. So by suspending the no-bid process, as has been done by repeated administrations, it's jacking up the price. We believe we can save literally billions of dollars by eradicating this practice. So I fully support identifying savings in city agency budgets. It's absolutely what we have to do. And the council, as you've heard today, has its own ideas. The second idea that we are putting forward to lower costs is right now in the New York City budget, we as a city are spending $11 billion on public sector health care. That figure, by the way, just 5 years ago was $6 billion. So it's almost doubled in 5 years. And that is the overall nut that we pay as a city to pay for health care for our public sector employees, of which we have over 300,000, retiree and dependent health care. We in New York City are the second largest purchaser of healthcare in all of New York State. We created this new Office of Healthcare Accountability, and we need to utilize that office to harness our purchasing power to drive down skyrocketing healthcare costs. And the last thing I'll mention on that is the studies show we could save $2 billion a year if we do that.
I wonder if you can just take us through your thinking about naming Councilmember Vernikov to look at anti-Semitism, this task force on anti-Semitism. She's called the mayor. She said that the mayor wants Jews to burn in an oven. She called Tish James as head of Jewish outreach, a capo sellout. Called a Jewish Hollywood film director a capo sellout. How can someone who's going to investigate that
Sure, I'm happy to address that. So to be clear, the Jewish caucus voted to create this task force, and they elected Councilmember Dinowitz as chair of our Jewish caucus, as well as Councilmember Ina Vernikov to that. So if you want to, I'll take a sheet. You want to say a few words on this?
Yeah. I want to first, good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Eric Dinowitz. I currently chair the Jewish caucus and now co-chair the task force to combat anti-Semitism. And I want to repeat what Speaker Menin said at the beginning, is that in the past few days, you have had 73 swastikas in a playground, a rabbi verbally and physically assaulted, and the Chabad Central, a car rammed in, backed up, and went back in. That's not to mention all the other things that go unreported, all the kids who want to take off their yarmulkes because they are afraid of being Jewish in our city. And I invite any single one of you to walk by a shul on a Saturday morning and look at volunteers from the synagogue wear bulletproof vests outside, because that's what we have to do to keep our congregations safe. So it is first critical that under Speaker Menin's leadership, we are forming this task force to directly confront head-on anti-Semitism, the hate crimes of which make up more than combined any other hate crime in New York City. And this is coming out of the Jewish caucus. The Jewish caucus has long been supportive of addressing anti-Semitism and doing initiatives to ensure that we are not just speaking out against hate, but we are doing something to address hate and anti-Semitism in our city. And the Jewish caucus voted. I'm answering your question.
Well, you have a member that said something that is hate speech, and I get it. I'm Jewish. I have a Jewish son. I'm married to a Jew. How can a person who is doing hate speech, right, saying that the mayor wants the Jews to burn in an oven, be on?
So I first appreciate that you're Jewish, but you don't have to be Jewish to address anti-Semitism. And in fact, the majority of the committee the task force is not Jewish. I don't condone any of her behaviors or her speech in that regard, right? But I am co-chairing this with her, and Councilmember Schulman had said previously, if Congress can do it, if Congress can have a bipartisan committee to address anti-Semitism, we can do the same thing here in the City Council. And that's why I'm very proud to be co-chairing this committee. We are going to be really addressing this head on. This isn't about the past actions of anyone. I am moving forward, looking forward to working with the co-chair that was elected by the Jewish caucus and with the members of the task force.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Councilman Dinowitz, if I could just follow up on that, please.
with this committee and with anti-Semitism. It seems, given the incidents that you already cited, that the level of hate in the city has increased exponentially. And I wonder what steps you think
okay.
One thing, Marcia, that I would say about that, first of all, today we're introducing a number of bills, and the bills focus on the safe perimeter around houses of worship, around schools. This has been a big problem around what happened at Park East Synagogue, what happened in Kew Gardens in Queens. We need to address this issue. And so the bills that we are introducing today as part of the package really help to strike that balance between keeping the First Amendment right to peacefully protest, but then also making sure that people can enter not just synagogues, but all houses of worship freely. And then we have other bills in the package that create a hotline to report hate crimes, to support whether it's anti-Semitism or others. We've heard from so many New Yorkers that if they're the victim of a hate crime, they're not sure what to do. Do you call 311? Do you call 911? So now we have this hotline. And the other bills provide security for all houses of worship. So for those that are in need, some of these smaller houses of worship that don't have it. So I think through this legislative package, we're going to be able to address some of those issues.
Just to follow up on Miles' question, though, I think, not to speak for him, I don't think the question is like bipartisanship. It's that some of what she said would seem like counterproductive to reaching like a better resolution. And in addition to the quotes Miles read, she also referred to Mr. Mamdani when he was mayor elected as terrorist lover and said jihad is coming to New York City if Zoran Mamdani wins. I would like to know if you agree with that.
I don't agree with those comments at all. And I just want to be clear. We have had numerous council members in the last iteration of the council who have said things that are offensive and problematic. We have a very serious harassment policy in the city council. We have a new standard and ethics committee that is going to be vigorous and look at these things. I will be, continuing to monitor any comments. We're not the speech police and we're not looking to do that, but we are looking to ensure that comments that incite violence or that violate our harassment policy, that they are not tolerated. So moving forward, we will be looking at that.
Then why give her a larger platform on this specific issue if you don't agree with these comments?
Well, I don't agree with those comments, but there are many comments that we don't agree with. And the Jewish caucus wanted to have this task force. They voted, and we'll be paying close attention to future comments. The Jewish caucus voted to have this task force. The Jewish caucus elected 2 co-chairs in the model of what Congress does, which is a bipartisan task force, just like they do in Congress. That was. I will be obviously paying very close attention. Obviously, I don't agree with the comments that she made in the past, and I've made that known to her. I don't agree with those comments made in the past, and I've been very clear. Those comments, we cannot make them moving forward. So we'll be paying close attention to that, absolutely.
The mayor has described this budget crisis the city is facing as perhaps worse than the one it faced during the Great Recession, which is really something. But it takes 2 to tango when it comes to the budget. He seems to have laid all the blame at the feet of Mayor Adams. Does the council not bear some responsibility? Was the council doing everything it should have been doing to keep the city's finances under control?
Well, I will tell you the council finance team is right now doing our own evaluation, as they do every single year. So we'll be putting out our own plan in the coming weeks. We do know that Wall Street has had very strong revenues this year, and so that is going to help on the revenue projections. We do believe there are additional areas where there could be savings, and so we are going to obviously be looking at those areas. I outlined a few examples of savings, whether it be through the eradication of no-bid contracts or through the Healthcare Accountability Office and harnessing our purchasing power. We are going to be a council that is focused aggressively on savings. So what happened in the past 4 years, I can just say that moving forward, we're going to focus on making sure that we are identifying savings across the board.
Does the council also view a millionaire's tax, as the mayor does, as part of the solution here?
So I think one of the things that's really important is that the council focus on the areas that we control. Obviously, Albany does the taxes. That is not in our purview. So what we're really focused on is what can we be value added on? What we can be value added on is looking at all the various programs. We are actually going to be using new data metrics to evaluate when we're disseminating funds to different groups, because I believe we need more stringent controls than existed in the past. I'm a strong believer in if we are disseminating funding to different different organizations. They must have the data metrics to support continued support by the council. Just as when I was census director, we did the exact same thing. So we're putting in more stringent evaluation criteria in place, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to identify numerous places for savings.
Speaker, you and the mayor announced a new quadrennial
Yes.
last Friday.
Yeah.
Press release. His office has already said that he would not take an increase during his first term. So I'm wondering what you make of the optics of his position, and also, what you think about a salary increase for council members, given the fact that we were talking about efficiencies and this $12 billion budget gap.
Sure, I do agree with the mayor's position. I also will not be either, but we're putting forward this plan that the council members really had advocated for, a cost of living adjustment that hadn't been done since 2016. It's, I think, important with these quadrennial commissions that we do that in a good government way, which is what the quadrennial commission does. And so I look forward to the commission meeting. It will then issue its recommendations, and then we will take it from there.
Councilor, I have a question about, you started a news conference about sending a letter to Charles Schumer about what's happening in Minneapolis.
Sure.
The council regularly passes resolutions about matters in Albany and D.C., so I think it's a fair question to have you on the record and say what you think about Albany raising taxes on corporations and millionaires to fix this city budget.
So I think, first of all, that we have to focus on what we have control over. Right now, in the conversations I've had with the governor, she was very, very clear that she is not willing to do anything on taxes. So given that that is the position, we in the city council have to figure out, well, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here is we've got to identify savings in the budget. I've outlined a number of ways we can find savings. I assure you we're going to find additional savings. And the last thing that I would say is we in the council are doing our own budget analysis. The council always does that. We will be releasing that in the next couple weeks. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Did you appoint Verna? She thanked you earlier in a tweet. Why do you?
No, that was the problem.
Why would you thank you?
Okay, I guess it's over.
Dan, thank you for following up. I already had two, but that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. I like that. About the water. I mean, it's not.